So a few weeks ago, I was home in New York, and I'm walking my dogs, and we're coming up to this coffee shop that I must have passed like hundreds of times, and I'd never set foot in it. But this morning was different, because this morning, as I'm passing it, I smelled the most amazing scent coming from this coffee shop. And like if you've been to New York in June, if you smell anything on the street, it's never good. So this was like especially delightful. So it turned into a cartoon at that point, because I'm literally like walking slowly with my dogs, taking it in, and I get to the corner of the block and I can still smell this thing. I'm like, what are they baking in that coffee shop? So I walk back and I'm thinking, okay, I go into this coffee shop and it's a small place, and I'm greeted by this older lady, super cute. She's wearing an apron, she has one oven mitt on, and I say, excuse me, I smelled something amazing coming from this coffee shop, and I had to find out what it was. And she's like, there's this tray in her hand, and it's like, there's steam coming off it, and she's like, oh, thank you for coming in. This is my banana walnut muffins. It's from my mother's recipe. Would you like to try one? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna need one of those. So I ended up buying it, and it was the best muffin ever. And I'm thinking, I ended up leaving the coffee shop, and kind of like the art of visuals we're talking about, it making me feel something, and I couldn't figure out what that was when I was reflecting on it. And what I realized is I'd had a memorable experience. In fact, I Instagrammed about it. I did that cool thing where, it's like, I love this thing, and it's like a TV show. Anyway, that's what it was. So I want to talk to you today about creating experiences, because what I realized, it wasn't about going into a store and buying a muffin. It was about, I'd been on a normal day, something that delighted me and surprised me, interrupted my day, forced me to take a different action. I engaged with someone new, I bought this product, and I really felt something afterwards. So I want to talk today about experiences and how we can create them. So back when I moved to the US 2011 as an architect, and when I was in architecture school, I did my thesis on experiential architecture and how different spaces can make us feel differently depending on how we design them. And as I've gotten out of architecture and kind of gotten into entrepreneurship, I've realized that I've become fascinated with how we can create products with experiences and that can make us feel differently. Because we're at a point in history where creating a physical connection and a physical experience have eclipsed the manufacturing of physical things. So your goal, whether you sell a physical product, a digital product, a service, should not be to sell a product, but to create an experience, because that's, again, what will make people feel something, what will make them come back. So my goal today is to teach you how to create an experience in a three-part process, so that you can become more present to what you're currently doing, and then see opportunities of how to create emotions and positive experiences for your customers. Also, I have a link to these slides, so don't worry about taking pictures, because I take pictures and I never look at them. They're those awkward ones in my photo album. So a little bit about the last few years of my life has been crazy. Alexis kind of mentioned it in the intro. So we launched BestSelf in 2015 with a single product on Kickstarter. And you've heard these Kickstarter stories before. You heard one yesterday with Studio Neat, where you don't have business yet, you don't really have anything yet, you just have this idea that you want to create, and you're not really sure how it's going to go. But you press launch, and like the universe kind of does its thing. And day one, we hit our goal, actually 28 hours, so it was just over a day. We hit $15,000, and at the end of 30 days, we hit $320,000 on our Kickstarter. It was insane, like mind-blowing. And we pre-sold 10,000 units on our Kickstarter. We made enough that we printed or created 30,000 units, so we had 20,000 units to launch our business. So we launched our online store January 1st, 2016, and 8 months later, we find out that we win the Shopify Build a Business competition. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's this annual competition that they do where they do this epic prize, and we got to spend a week at the Gatsby Mansion with Tony Robbins, Marie Forleo, Damon John, and Tim Ferriss. And we also got to ring the New York Stock Exchange opening bell, which, as someone that moved here, it's kind of like this American dream. And I used to work like a few blocks from here, and I never would have thought that I would even be in the building, never mind ring the bell. And it's funny, how many people here have parents that don't exactly know what it is that they do? So that's where my parents still live in Belfast, so they kind of see stuff online, but they don't actually know what it is. But when this happened, they were like, we still don't really know, but it seems like it's working out. So I got a lot less worried things. And then the craziness continued because we ended up scaling and growing so much that we won the next year's competition, which was companies over $1 million that scaled from the start of the competition to the end. So we were very greedy, but it was very surprising. And so we got to go to Fiji and spend time with Tony Robbins again and Tim Ferriss. So I tell you all this not to just tell you, but it all started with us creating an experience with our product and with our customer. And what is an experience? So think about coffee. So you have coffee beans, that's a commodity. You have a bag of coffee, that's a product. Cup of coffee is a service. And something like Starbucks is an experience. So if you think about Starbucks, when they first started, Howard Schultz's goal was to create a third place between home and work, and he described it as somewhere that has comfortable chairs, chill music, the internet, and also coffee. And it's funny, he described it like that, which I thought was very funny, because he knew that the whole thing was not just about coffee. And the reason he wanted to feel like a continental coffee shop, so feel completely different from anything that currently existed. And by doing this, he made the experience feel better and feel different than anyone else, which is when we stopped using Dunkin' Donuts as an anchor for what we were going to pay for it. I mean, they use the terms tall, grande, venti instead of small, medium, and large. And they have these fancy names for coffees. So how much more fancy do you feel saying, I'd like a grande Americano rather than a medium coffee? For a lot of people, enough to spend an extra few dollars, and that's how they separated themselves in our minds, and that's how we got started with feeling differently about that. Now here's another company that, did I go backwards there? Anyway, another company that I love the experience is Apple. So who here has bought an Apple product? Okay, so a lot of you guys. So you know that feeling when you get a new box and you're opening it and it feels so good. Everything is so meticulously designed. And you know that feeling when you pull off the cellophane off the screen? Oh, it's so good, right? So good. How many of you guys that bought an Apple product still have the box that your product came in? Okay? Okay. So I also... This is what my collection looks like. And like I said, I live in New York City, so I essentially pay rent to store these things. But I know you're thinking, Apple can do this, they're so big. But what about a company that sells the most boring product in the world? Razors. So if we met someone tonight and they said, oh, I work for a razor company, you'd be like, oh, okay, you talk a minute and then you go refill your drink. But if you meet someone, they're like, I work for Harry's. You want to pepper them with questions, including probably, how do I also work for Harry's? Because this is the result of not just selling a product, but creating an experience. So I want to talk to you about how do we do this at a small scale. We want to storyboard out the customer experience. So I want you to consider an experience like a 3-part act. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the beginning is the visceral reaction. So this is the immediate reaction you have to the form, to the texture, to the color. You can't really describe it or control it. It's just you see something and you like it or you don't. So this could be a website, could be a product, whatever it is, you just know if you like it. The next part is the behavioral. So this is kind of where visceral is form, this is function. Do you know how to use it? Is it functional? Does it satisfy your needs? This is the more cut and dry part of the experience. And the end is the reflective. So this is like the woo-woo part, but this is what separates just selling something with creating a feeling. So does it trigger surprise, delight, trust? Can you tell a story around it? Does it appeal to your self-image? How does it associate with your memories? This is all part of the reflective thing. So whether it's Harry's or Apple or me buying a muffin, all of them follow these 3 steps of the process. And when we created, so the first 2 are now, so within 10 minutes of opening a product, you've already experienced the first 2. The reflective part comes when you remember how you felt at the time. So here are some of the things that we did at BestSelf. So this is the product. You guys should all got it in your bag. And it's called the Self Journal, and it's a 13-week framework to achieve a goal. And like Starbucks separates themselves by saying grande instead of medium, we were very clear that we wanted to call it a framework for your goal rather than a day planner, because we wanted people to think of it as an investment to reaching a goal rather than planning their day, both because we wanted them to invest time in it, and also people are going to pay more to achieve a goal than to plan their day. The packaging. So we wanted to create an Apple-like experience, so something that made someone feel differently, and we would ask ourselves questions like, how do we build anticipation? How do we create an experience? How do we want people to feel when they're opening it? And our mission was to design a beautiful box that felt like Apple, but didn't get put in a closet, was actually used for something, and the box served as a physical representation of your goals to be celebrated and displayed. And this hits sort of the visceral. You feel something when you see it, you know what to do when you open it, and it appeals to your self-image as someone that's trying to be a person that achieves their goals. With the unboxing, we even went so far as to design personal packing tape, which my co-founder thought was hilarious when I did this, but it makes a difference because, funny story, we had someone that in their apartment building, they saw this box, and it wasn't their box, but they saw the packing tape, they looked up the company, and they ended up ordering from us and telling us this story. So we created this experience even back in the Kickstarter days. This wasn't something that when we launched the store, we were very purposeful with how we did it from the start. And we're also a big hit with pets. The next thing we did was we spent time creating information on how to actually use the product, because we knew to create a business, we would have to make sure that people not just bought once, but find success with it. So we spent a lot of time curating information and like everything they needed to make sure that they could actually accomplish it. And then we created a community. We have a private Facebook group. It's over 31,000 people now. And this is a place for support, for resources, for accountability. And we've had so many people say that they bought the product and then they got this amazing community of people that are also trying to achieve their goals. And this community has been a huge asset, not just to the customers, but to us, because we created challenges for them. And so listen up, this is a great marketing thing that we did that we didn't intend to do originally, so I really can't say that it was pre-planned. But we did this thing where it was kind of like a rebate system where if you use the journal every day for 30 days, we would give you a $10 Amazon gift card. And so what you had to do is you would take a picture of you using it, or of it being used. You would tag it, you would put it on your social media or in the group, and it would create engagement in the group. Other people were motivated to hit their goals. We wanted them to create the habit, because if they created the habit, they would be more likely to come back and buy again. And even better was we got a ton of customer-generated content, which we've spent like too much money on really nice, like illustrated, really pretty graphics, and these converted better than anything else. So this is kind of the 3-step process that you want to look at when you consider what your customer experience looks like. And here's some questions you can ask. I'm not going to read them all out because I'm running out of time, but how do you want, like, really get into your customer's head? Like, how do you want them to feel at each part of your process? Again, whether you sell a physical product, a digital product, a service. There's a journey, and you want to really figure out what that looks like. Now, if you sell a digital product, I want you to consider how you can create a physical connection between your product and the person. Like, let me just put this out there. Have you ever bought an online course with the full intention of doing it, but never actually getting around to it? I mean, I'm going to say I have. But have you ever gone to a store, purchased something for $197, and then never actually took it out of the box? Probably not. And that's because we want people's perception of value is much greater if they can hold something in their hands. So a great example of someone that did this really well a few years ago was I bought something from AppSumo, and like a week later, I get this moleskin notebook in the mail. It's small, and I remember thinking, wow, this is cool. I buy this digital product, and they took the intangible, and they added a physical gift, and it made it way more memorable, all for less than $10. So now it's your turn. I want you to take your business, whatever it is, your packaging, your experience, your website, your product, evaluate the business that you're running, and think through your process from beginning to end. Where are you leaving them excited? Where are you not leaving them excited? Where could you be doing more? Where can you give them a story to tell? Because if you're more present with what you're currently doing, you're going to see the opportunities for everything else that you could be doing to make that person feel differently towards you, your product, and your company. And I'm going to leave you with this one. Fall in love with your customer, not your product. My gifts are not working. It's very upsetting. So I told you earlier, we had the opportunity to get mentorship from Tony Robbins last year, and he's saying, like, figure out what business you're in and what business you need to be in. And he said specifically, fall in love with your customer, not your product. And what he meant by this is that if Apple had fallen in love with their product, they would have been stuck making computers. They never would have made the iPad or the iPod or the iPhone. And someone that did fall in love with their product and it didn't end up well was Blockbuster, where they thought people wanted to go to a store and pick a DVD, and if it wasn't there, then they just couldn't get it. And it's one of the reasons they turned down buying Netflix for $50 million, because they thought that they had it made. And by the time they realized that that's not actually what their customer wanted, it was too late. Okay, this GIF is so great. I'm so sad that you can't see it. So I want to let you in on a secret right now. I actually almost fell in love with our product. I mean, I kind of did for a minute, because I'd seen how big of a difference it had made in people's lives, and I thought that, this was it. But that was Blockbuster video talking. So don't be Blockbuster. So yes. I'm so glad that worked. We started with the self-journal, a daily structure to achieve your goals. Then we launched more products based around that framework. And then we learned from our customers that they wanted to bridge the gap between physical and digital. And that's when we created Dawn. And Dawn is a new app. It's in beta right now that integrates your calendar and your tasks to smart schedule your week. And had we not fallen in love with the customer, we would never have known that. So now it's your turn. Go fall in love with your customer, create an experience for them, and change your business. Thank you.